Hello and welcome. This is Barrett from the C4 Cyber Club here at Cypress College. In this video, we will be covering the Ethical Hacking Lab series for password cracking with John the Ripper and Hashcat. Some of the objectives we'll cover. We're going to be generating password lists for the password cracking itself. We'll be using tools such as Cool and Crunch for that, and which it's a very important process because you need to make sure that you have a good list to feed into the password crackers such as John the Ripper and Hashcat. We'll also be looking at some interesting and useful Linux commands in terms of finding specific information within files such as grep, and using the cat command to combine multiple lists together and redirecting that output to another file. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first part of the lab, we will generate some password lists. I'm going to go ahead and open Terminal. And first we'll be looking at a tool called Cool. So we can go get help on that. And essentially what this tool does is it will spider a website, for example, and create a word list based on it. So in the lab here, we're targeting this .12 machine. And if we look on our topology, that is the OWASP BWA. And as an example, let's go ahead and open our browser. And we could see what type of website is at that IP. Because essentially this is what we're going to use Cool to spider, or crawling is another term that's used. You can think of it as like web crawling. And it's very similar to how like a search engine crawls a site to know, if somebody's searching for a specific phrase. That's how they know that they could recommend that site. So if you clicked all through this site, it's this Cool tool is going to pull a lot of these words, create a word list out of it. So the thinking here is that, well, maybe the administrator of this site used a word that is similar to the content to potentially figure out and crack somebody's password. So let's go back into Terminal. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll run Cool. We'll say copy the text to a file called OWASP words.txt. We want to make sure, tab 192.168.68.12. So we want to enter in the IP address of the essentially the website or web server that we're crawling. And it says we'll have to wait about 1 to 2 minutes. So I'll meet you back here when this is done. Okay, so it looks like that is complete. And we could take do a long listing of this directory with ls-l. And we see that OWASP words.txt has been created. If we wanted to take a look at it, we could type in cat OWASP words. Remember the concatenate command displays the output into the terminal. And you see it's a lot of stuff. If you scroll up, this is everything that it pulled from the website. And specifically, as we noted in the command, the minimum length, that -m, has a minimum length of 5. So anything you see here, April, that meets the requirements of the minimum word length. So anything 5 letters or above, it's going to pull. Okay, so now we're going to move on to another tool. It's called Crunch. In this, we could just essentially generate passwords, and these are not particularly, whoops, these are not particularly words. So these are going to be a character set. And in this case, we're doing a minimum of 4 characters and a maximum of 8 characters in length, made up of all the letters of the alphabet, but only in lowercase. We'll go ahead and run this command. We're saying between 4 and 8. Character set is lowercase alphabet. And we're going to output that. Whoops. We're going to output that to list.txt. And you can see here, the estimated file size of that is going to be 409 megabytes. So you can see how these word lists can be very large in size. And if we do, okay, so 100% complete, let's do a long listing. And now you see list.txt. And right there, you see quite a large file size compared to, 31 kilobytes for that OWASP passwords. Now, I'm not going to display this out using the cat command because that would probably go on for a while. You could check it out using Nano text editor, though. Even that, it's probably going to take a moment to load. Okay, so that loaded. It took a good probably 30 to 45 seconds just to open this file. But as you can see, it is just a combination of letters. And it's going to eventually go down, and it'll eventually be 5, it'll be 6, and 7, and an 8 combos of those. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that. And so you could see we now have 2 lists here, 2 word lists. We have list.txt. We also have OWASP words.txt. And so we can combine these actually using one command in the Linux terminal. We could do this using the cat command. So you know that normally this would display the output right onto the screen, especially if I hit enter right here. And essentially that would be displaying out both of these text files, and that would get really messy. But what we're doing here, we're just going to redirect this using this greater than symbol or arrow. We're going to redirect both of those files into a new file called mylist.txt. We'll go ahead and press enter. You can see the cursor blinking, it's working, and it's done. So now if I do a long listing again, we see a new file called mylist.txt. So it combines both of those current word lists. And let's add one more. So we're going to be using John the Ripper next. And it does actually come with a built-in word list in Kali Linux. And that is located in the user share John folder, and it's called password.lst. We could even say cat and then give the exact location of that. And now if you want to do that same type of redirect, but instead you want to append it to a file that already exists, you just want to make sure you use double arrows here. So we can go ahead and append that list also to mylist.txt. Great. And if I did a long listing again, you could see that this file size of my list continues to grow because we're continually adding onto it. So essentially, this is a combination of 3 different word lists right now. And something to consider too, when you are eventually to the point where you're going to actually do the password cracking and initiate it, you have to keep in mind the size of a word list too and how much time it's going to take. You also might want to consider the content of the word list in the type of site or service you might be trying to maybe brute force password crack, or if it's a hash, because you may want to choose different word lists for different scenarios. And in this case, if we did a word count list of, let's see, mylist.txt, this is the really large one, we see that it has 48 million words. But if we did a word count list on, just list, or no, not that one, sorry, OWASP words, that was the very first one that we created. We see that only has a list of 3,405. So if you start running this one, it could take much longer, but it depends on how specific you need to get. Okay, so moving on to part 2 of the lab. Essentially what we're going to do, we're going to create a couple new user accounts within Linux, give them some fairly simple passwords, and we'll see how we can use John the Ripper to crack those. So this is a nice little experiment in Linux user management as well. So we'll type in user add bake3, user add bake4. So we've just created 2 new users, and we'll give them each a password. So for fake3, we're going to give a password of 123456 and retype that. EASSWD password for fake4, and the password for that one is just going to be password. You can imagine these will definitely be cracked pretty quickly, which is a good experiment for the lab. Now, the lab walkthrough doesn't show this, but first, before this cat etsy shadow, let's cat etsy password, and that's PASSWD. So this is the file in Linux. I know it's called password, but it actually doesn't hold the password itself. It used to a long time ago, but then at some point they switched it so that the hashed password is located in the etsy shadow file. So essentially what the etsy password file holds is user list or usernames. So we could see these new usernames that we just created. It assigns user IDs. It also assigns a group ID. It tells you the location of their home folder, and it will also tell you which shell they use. A lot of these other users you see here are actually system users. And at the very top, you'll see root or the administrator. So now if we cat, let me clear screen. If we cat etsy shadow, remember this is where the actual passwords are stored, and we see fake3 and fake4 added here. And then what we see here is the hashed password. So this is what we're going to be attempting to crack. And it's important to note that hashes actually can't technically be reversed. But what happens is tools like John the Ripper essentially take the word list, create new hashes based on the word list, and then what you're doing is you're comparing hashes. So it's not, technically decrypting the hash, but it's only comparing the hash. Okay, so what we could do, we could run a command called unshadow, and this is a command that's essentially built in, once John the Ripper is installed, this command is available to just combine these 2 files. It's combining these 2 files so that John the Ripper can utilize that. And we're going to move those both into hashes.txt. I do a long listing. You see that hashes.txt was created here. And let's take a look at that file and see what we're working with. So you see it pulls all of the information for all the users. And we don't necessarily want all of that, right? We're only wanting to crack these two fake 3 and fake 4 users. So what we could do, we could use a really handy command in Linux called grep, and that's to find particular words in a file. So first, and also there's another technique here called piping, where we could run multiple commands in one line. So what we'll do, we'll cat hashes.txt. You can see if I just run this, as usual, it displays that on the screen. But what we could do instead is we could redirect that output by using a pipe. So we're basically saying take the output of that, search through it, and grep for anything that starts with the word fake. And then we can use this, it's called a globbing character. We could use this asterisk to say, okay, search for anything that begins with fake and ends with anything else. So of course, this is going to pull fake 3 and fake 4. If we did grep fake 3, that's going to pull only the one line, but it's going to miss out fake 4. So that's why we use the asterisk here. That will pull both. So now we're not done with this line yet, because now we want to take what was found from the grep command and redirect that into hashes2.txt. So we're creating a new text file. But just to go over this again, we're outputting hashes.txt, but not to the screen yet. We're piping all of that information into the grep command to search for anything that begins with fake and then has anything else after it, any other characters. And then we're redirecting all of that into this text file. And now that's complete. If we do ls-l, we see hashes2.txt. And if we cat hashes2.txt, it prints out only those 2 lines. So that's a really good example of how powerful Linux commands can be in redirecting outputs and searching for very specific things. So now that we have that, we can move on to the actual password cracking. We type in John. That's just going to give us an output of essentially the same as typing -help. It's going to give us a lot of the different usage options. And we'll type John. We're going to tell it which word list to use. In this case, we're not going to use the word list that we created, that really big one, because honestly, that would take a lot of time. If you want to experiment with it on your own, feel free. You can kind of watch it work. But we're just going to use the built-in password.lst word list that comes, it's basically included with John the Ripper. And then we're going to tell it which file to pull the hashes from. Go ahead and hit enter. And this shouldn't take too long considering the easy passwords. All right, and we have success. We can see here, password for fake 4 is password. The password for the fake 3 account is 123456. So just a reminder, what happened here is we didn't necessarily decrypt the hashes, but we took the word list, we generated brand new hashes for every word that it tried, and then compared it to the hash of these user accounts here. Okay, and now we can move on to Hashcat. It's a very similar process, but it does require a little bit of editing of the hash file. We can get help on Hashcat. This actually brings up more of a manual page style. So we could see this hash type, this -m, is something we'll be looking at. We're going to be making sure that we specify a SHA-512 hash type. And the attack mode, I believe we choose a straight mode. So we'll be using this -A option as well. You could press spacebar through this to take a look at all the various options for Hashcat. And once you keep going through here, you could see where, depending on what type of hash you're cracking, you have to select the various hash types. In this case, we're going to be working with the 1800 SHA-512 hash type. Okay, so I'm going to press Q to exit out of there. So let's go ahead and open up LeafPad, because we are going to have to make a quick edit to those hash files. Okay. So we'll go to Open, go to the root folder, and we're going to open that hashes2 that we had just created by using that unshadow command. And so what we want to remove is at the very end of both of these lines. So I'm going to press the N key on my keyboard, and you want to remove everything from this colon to the end. And you may recognize this. This is information from that Etsy password file. These are like the user IDs, the group ID, the home folder of the user. So this is something that Hashcat doesn't really know what to do with. John the Ripper is likely programmed to maybe ignore that. So we're going to delete that out. That way, all that we're left with is the hash. Then we're going to save this as hashes3.txt. Okay, we can close out a LeafPad. And back in terminal, we'll just run hashcat, that -M. Remember, we're selecting the hash type of SHA-512. -A, we're choosing the attack mode. 0 is what they call straight mode. And we're going to refer to that hashes3.txt. And we're going to use the same password list, the one that we used from John the Ripper. Okay, go ahead and press enter. Let's see, no hashes loaded. Okay, so it looks like I forgot to remove something from the hashes text file, but no worries. Let's just go ahead and open that back up. I'm going to go to open, go back to the root or recently used. We see the hashes3.txt. And yeah, this is what I forgot to remove right here, right at the beginning. We also want to make sure we remove the fake3 colon and the fake4 colon. That way we begin right at all we have left is the hash. I'm going to go ahead and save that file. Come back here. I'm just going to press the up arrow to rerun this command. Now we see it working. And that was quite fast. So you see all hashes have been recovered. Whoops. All hashes have been recovered. We see the hash followed by the password. Yeah, that was even faster than running John the Ripper. And so yeah, we have successfully cracked those passwords using both John the Ripper and Hashcat. And that concludes this lab on password cracking with John the Ripper and Hashcat. Thanks a lot for watching.